I hear it. Do you want me to stay? I think it might be this microphone from the headphones.
No, because when they reset everything, I need to reselect where the audio source is coming from.
Do you want to hear it just to make sure?
Saying the ayes have it. That is approved for item 1B. We're going to do an informational 2025 summary of first quarter
Because
report.
That's hissing. That's different from my noise, so we're good.
Alright, so thank you for the opportunity to present the county's first forecast for 2026. The packet before you contains three documents: key economic and fiscal indicators, the 2026 first forecast, and a current snapshot of our fund balance. Today, I'll briefly review the economic indicators we monitor, discuss how we closed out 2025,
I
walk
mean,
through
it's
the
better
first
than nothing.
forecast for 2026,
If we don't talk
and
about
an
it,
update on our current fund balance position. So the first page, as I said, contains the key indicators we use to monitor economic conditions and evaluate how broader trends may impact county's finances. I'd like to highlight three of these. Approximately halfway down the page, you will see reconciled sales tax collection. After several years of unprecedented growth, sales tax collections returned to more historic levels in 24 and 25, growing at 1.5% and 1.9% respectively. What is noteworthy this year is the first quarter collections are currently up 7.5% compared to the same time period last year. By comparison, the first quarter growth for 2025 was actually negative 1%. Did you have a question? 7.5% for the first quarter this year so far, year over. Up. Sure. So while these results reflect strong economic activity, we remain cautious. Inflation, consumer spending trends, and broader economic uncertainty could moderate growth during the remainder of the year.
At the end of 2025, the sewer fund maintained a healthy financial position, aided largely by expenditure savings, including salary and benefits savings related to vacancies. As with the general fund, though, WEP has experienced success in filling position and reducing staffing shortages. Looking ahead, the sewer fund faces significant long-term infrastructure and growth-related challenges. Meeting those needs will require a balanced strategy.
Sales tax remains the primary positive driver. The 2026 budget is assuming a 1% growth in 2025 and a 1.5% growth in 2026. Based on collections of 1.9 in 2025 and the current economic conditions, we're forecasting approximately 2% growth in 2026, resulting in an estimated positive variance of $5.2 million. Investment in Maurice continues to outperform budget expectations, and we're currently projected to exceed $2.1 million. While revenues remain strong, expenditures are beginning to align more closely with budget, and several areas are creating pressure on both this current year's budget and future budgets. As I mentioned, the department is continuing to successfully fill vacant positions, reducing the level of savings. In addition, several labor agreements have been settled over the past year, increasing ongoing personnel costs. The county is also seeing significant fiscal pressures in our benefits. We're experiencing higher health insurance claim costs, prescription costs, pension contributions, including the Tier 6 impacts, and increased expenditures related to our Medicare Advantage program. These trends will continue to place pressure on our future operating budgets. Foster care expenditure remains a significant challenge due to both placement volume and substantial rate increases implemented over the past several years. Medicaid remains one of the county's largest financial obligations. The county share has now reached the statutory cap of $105 million annually. In recent years, the state's intercept of enhanced federal Medicaid funding has effectively shifted additional costs to counties and increased the county's Medicaid burden while limiting opportunities
at $229.4 million. So that's as of December 31st, 2025. The CFO did mention $33 million was budgeted use in 2025. We only used $19 million. I know this is semantics, and I don't mean to be argumentative, but we lost $19 million in 2025. It was reported in the state of the county, and then today we're still calling that a surplus because it was budgeted. I still think that that's a $19 million decrease. Was budgeted, acknowledged, understood, but we had to dip into our rainy day fund. Sales tax, $2 million on the accrual basis. It was $2 million over the adopted budget for 2025. The CFO did mention, and I'd like to point out, foster care, $4.1 million, and daycare up, foster care costs up $4.1 million, daycare costs up $7.3 million. Those are offset by some state reimbursements, but nonetheless, increase in cost. Once again, I'm going to be broken record a little bit on WEP, water protection, operating loss of $9 million versus budgeted. Once again, kind of is what it is. That's where we stand. Investments were down, and interest on investments was down. Obviously, when one goes, the other does as well. I think I'll stop there. I had some other notes that I would be continually repeating what the CFO has already reported, and I know you have a long agenda, and we can certainly jump in any questions that you have, or as always, I'm available by call, text, email, whatever. So thank you, Rob. Any questions?
Are there any questions from legislators? Lead man.
So, I guess you probably don't miss the party, but I miss the good old days of October screening the CFOs during these two reports, arguing the semantics. So, I'm going to ask you.
You want me to yell at Christie? Is that what
No,
we don't want to
without those days. I'm not agree on that. But can you qualify the semantics you were talking about just a little bit more? Help us understand why you're calling it a loss. Walk me through your perspective on that.
You know, and I try to bring it in, and I'll say a basic budgeting in our own household. If I have to spend $100 of my savings account because I didn't make my bills exceeded my salary, I think that's a deficit here, in my opinion. You have savings, that's what it's there for, I understand that. I'm saying the semantics of, if I budgeted and said, I know I have $1 million worth of bills, and I know I'm only going to make $900,000 this year, how am I going to do that? Well, I have $100,000 in savings. Fine, but that's still a loss in my mind. That's not operating at a surplus. And I'll say the semantics, like we ended the year in a surplus, but we used our fund balance. That doesn't work for me. A bit personal opinion, quite frankly. You know, 30 people in this room might have 30 different opinions, but my opinion is that's a loss.
I'll leave it in.
Thank you for coming in. Thank you for giving this to us. You just mentioned one thing. You don't have to tell us now. You can just email us that. You mentioned pertaining to foster care and daycare that were reimbursed by the state. Do we know the amount or percentage that the state reimburses us?
Phil, do you have that in front of you? I don't have the full reimbursable amount. Do you know that, Christine? Christine knows. Thank you. See, I looked over for help, right? I can't be yelling at her.
So for daycare, it's 100% reimbursement outside of our maintenance cover. Foster care varies depending on the population, different things like condition must come back in terms of what that is like, but it varies depending on a lot of different things. And can I just put my 2 cents into
and sometimes we're having discussions like this with Onondaga to say, what do you think? Is this or is this not? Or split boards or split everything that we literally negotiate in sometimes or out.
Right, there's no standard that says we can't report all of it, but what's the utility?
There's a lot here already.
Yeah, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from legislators?
Great.
Seeing none, thank you, Comptroller.
Thank you.
Appreciate you. Next, we're going to
DWR is an additional program. Our allocation this year is $1,167,993.
Any questions? No. Move so moved. Legislator Romeo, a second. Legislator Jensen, all those in favor? All those opposed? All those abstained? 5B passes, and now 5G.
Pave our potholes. This is a kid local name. She named this one. I remember that a few years ago. Same thing, additional paving funds. The county's allocation
So we want term limits. My local law, one is for the comptroller, one is for the county executive. Both of them are 12-year term limits, meaning 3 to 4-year terms. I don't see how any way else I can explain that. I think we solved this, and I think we kind of had this conversation a couple of times.
So 8A pertains to simply the comptroller, and 8B is the county executive and the comptroller together. Legislator, now do you mind just defining what makes 8C different?
Yep, thank you. So 8C also includes the county executive and the comptroller. The difference here is a couple of differences. This would be four-year terms. There's one difference that is commencing with the term starting in 2030, since the next term will be only a 3-year term. So we'll be commencing in 2030 the next 4-year term. That's one difference that's 4 and 4. The other difference is this was negotiated with the other parties that are involved in this. So both the comptroller, who sent us out an email saying giving his support for term limits in general, he didn't pick one version or the other, he just said in general, and the county executive, who is again working together to put something that will pass, will support this. So in a nutshell, that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Leader Hernandez, I have a question.
I just have a question. I know this question clarified. You said this one was negotiated with the comptroller and the county executive, the people who are involved. I just want to make sure because I don't hear you clear. Did they negotiate 16 years, or did they just negotiate term limits? Or which one negotiated 16 years?
Yeah,
They
the
were trying to
16,
figure out
the
16.
term limits and the 4-4-year terms.
I have a question. Was 4-4-year terms like a sticking point? Like, why 4 years instead of 3 4-year terms?
I think there's a few things to do with that. I personally, I think the biggest thing is that unlike the county legislature, which is we can, you don't have to give up your life to be a county legislator. You can still have a job. Either the comptroller or the county executive, you are giving up your career to do that job, and it's got an end date on it. And so we want to make sure that, to make sure we get the best people possible, that folks know, and they still got to get elected every 4 years, so they've got to do a good job. But that they know that they can, it's a 4-year, it's a 16-year total package. If you're doing a good job and get reelected every 4 years, that would be the max to make it a little bit more attractive. Again, since someone is walking away from, potentially, a career with a retirement and everything else that, that we have to do.
I'm going to recognize Legislator Thompson. So, question or statement? Yeah, just to contribute.
then resigns a year later, and then there's a replacement for 2 years, that does not count toward whatever the term limit ultimately is. So I can tell you I've looked at all of these, they all build it in. They all build in excluding whatever happens in the next 3 years, and that none of them start until the first full 4-year term.
Legislator Benson?
With that, thank you for clarifying that. With that in mind, I think again, it kind of gives another reason why it should be 3 consecutive hires and not in the district court.
Okay. Any other questions, point of clarification, please?
Just clarification, you know, because, like I said, we keep going back and forth, and we do want to collaborate, we do want to get some term limits, at the referendum, right? Because you brought this to us. What are you looking for? Like, what is it that you just want this piece of paper passed with Dave and that name on it? How can we collaborate? How can we get these term limits on? Because we started out with term limits, came back a couple of times, and gave us what you wanted. Then you created your own, right? We're trying to figure out what. No, I'm being serious. When we're having a conversation right here on Wednesday, how can we get term limits passed?
First of all, thank you. Sorry. You didn't give us what we wanted. You gave us what you wanted. You gotta be clear about that. That's number one. Number two, the collaboration comes down to the vote. We either support the same local law or we don't. And I'm not suggesting it should be all or nothing, but there are 3 viable choices here that will either get passed through local law, through a signature in the executive branch, or they won't. But I think that's where we're at right now. To answer your question.
Got it. I have a question for Legislator Benson, for Ryan, I guess. Each of these is for referendum, correct? Like we're voting to give it to the voters, or are either of these just voting to enact?
Yeah, so none of them have to go. This was decided kind of universally at session that they all would go. And that you guys do have the
term limits